I thought this selfie was a very interesting thing to address in a video. Of course, what does this selfie tell us? Well, initially it tells you something very interesting. It shows you this relationship between anti-poaching rangers from the DRC, the Congo, and the mountain gorillas that they are protecting. Now, there are 600 anti-poaching officers, and this selfie was taken by one of them, with the side note that he said it was just another day at the office. So these guys are at work and they work tirelessly, and I admire everything they do. Hundreds of these wardens have died protecting the mountain gorilla. Even last week 2 died as well. So you remember the Congo is very war-torn, very war-torn. So there's just constant problems around these mountain gorillas in their habitat, and this reflects in the need for having these 600 guys. But these 600 guys, they have a 6-month training course on how to protect, etc. But they don't have education on how nature works, etc. And thus, these photos actually tell 2 stories. They tell the beautiful story of how these guys are protecting them so closely that these gorillas behave human-like in their behavior in the wild. They are wild gorillas. And they pose, ultimately. They stand for these photos and they are wild. It's like they are tame. It's like they're not wild anymore. And what that tells us is a chilling factor. That we're at the point of human development where we have to accept that we now decide how nature survives. We decide that. Nature won't decide by itself unless nature rises up some virus to wipe out humanity, which obviously it could take ownership back from us. But if that doesn't happen, humanity now decides how nature will survive. And clearly already, in part, some of the mountain gorilla we're protecting, for all the numbers are increasing, are already changing. They're already in part dying. They're already in part extinct because they are no longer behaving in a natural fashion or manner. Now, I visited mountain gorilla, and I did so in Bwindi Impenetrable Forest in Uganda, which borders Rwanda and the Congo. And I was privileged to go and see them, and a habituated group. Not every single set of family of mountain gorillas has habituation. Not all of them have full human contact. And the problem you have is, it's a catch-22. In part, because of tourism, the numbers of wild mountain gorillas have tripled since I think 1981 or 89, one of those two. The numbers have tripled. There was only 240 remaining in the Congo. There's now 600 and something. If you take the separate pocket of mountain gorillas that live in Bwindi, then you get the good news that gorilla numbers have tripled, and they're close to 1,000 now since the 80s. So it's working. And that's because the permits are very expensive. If you're a normal tourist, you can pay between $500 and $1,500 for a 1-hour permit to trek through the forest and find the gorilla. That money pays for the staff who are with you, and the wardens and the people who guard the gorillas as well are paid for through that. So at the same time, however, there's always the concern that humans, because we're so similar, will bring sickness, etc. And also that these animals are no longer natural. They're becoming habituated to us. And also, if anything ever happens and destabilizes Uganda, Rwanda and Congo, the gorillas unfortunately are guaranteed to become extinct, because not only will the protection go, but they'll also trust humans. And anything that we can learn is that most humans can't be trusted when it comes to preserving nature and wildlife. So we have this tiny habitat where they live now under the guardianship of these men and women, but it's adapting their behavior. And that's the important thing I want to say, is we now decide how nature survives. It's up to us. And there are too many wishy-washy people all over the planet who want to be environmentalists and I used to be one of them. I used to think by simply going vegan was the greatest thing ever, and that's all you had to do. But I see so many people, they say going vegan is the best thing ever, that's how you save the planet, but then they just carry on doing the destructive Western lifestyle. They carry on just boozing, and they carry on just visiting clubs and just mindlessly wasting time instead of doing something about it. So I said recently, protecting the gorilla from conflict minerals is an important thing. Recycle used mobile phones. You can do mobile phone collection so as you can protect gorillas. That's something anybody can do for recycling, so you can get the coltan from the phones. It's something anyone can do, but too many of us now think in the world, they get into environmentalism, they hear about veganism, and they think that's all they need to do. And I'm here to say it's not at this point. We need people creating, thinking, building, trying, pushing hard and working. We need people who are going to do things that are out of the ordinary. We need people to raise awareness and lobby. And yes, you can blanket say that everyone going vegan is the best option for the planet, because to some degree that is true. Not here. So it's not the case, but for the West, to some degree, that is true, so long as people don't get sick when they do it. So going vegan's not the solution, because it's a step for some people. Now, of course, some people can't be vegan for whatever reason they're having, and that's fine. Just do what is best, is what I'm trying to say. First of all, have a minimalist approach to how you're going to tackle environmental problems, which means that you don't look at the global sphere initially, look at the thing around you. I love this recent thing that went around where people took photos of places covered in rubbish and then the photo of how it looked after they cleared it up. That's minimalist environmental work, and it works because everyone's doing a little bit rather than feeling overwhelmed by the gravity of what's ahead of them. And that's the problem with many activists back in the West. They see the level of activism that's required and it overwhelms them, so they hide in the alcohol and everything like that, in the normal Western sort of lifestyle, if you will, you know. I'm chasing the light around here. So be minimalist in your approach. I would love to say I'm going to help everything around me. The mountain gorilla are not far from me, the chimpanzees are not far from me, but I don't have an institution large enough to do that. But some people do, and they're trying really hard. There's the Diane Fossey and on the topic of great apes, and Jane Goodall Institute as well. They're doing amazing stuff, but I myself, I look around me and I can see species that are not on the endangered list, but will be if we keep destroying the habitat. So I've took on this forest near us, which isn't home to endangered species. Well, some actually, serval cats, etc. But it's still, my minimalist approach is a little bit bigger than others, but it's still tackling the problem, and it's a working example to show the local government and the national government how to protect their environment here as well, because there's a necessity in this country too, with the decline of lions and elephants and giraffes, etc. The country knows they can't have that because they rely on them for their tourism, and it's a huge part of the economy. So this photo tells us one thing: humanity is at the point. First of all, mountain gorillas in part are partially extinct as it is, not because of numbers, but because their characteristics and everything are being changed, because they are protected by people who don't fully understand the necessity of not being too, to some degree they can't not be too friendly with them because they follow them around because they're used to them. That's a huge and sad aspect, but it's just a necessary evil to keep the physical numbers alive. At the same time, it tells us that we as humans decide now how nature survives. And if you're not doing anything to do that, if you're still mindlessly pushing through life and overusing, as I was even not too long ago in my life, to be perfectly honest, overusing plastic and stuff like this, then start addressing it, because being a minimalist environmentalist is the key. That's how you're going to solve the problem. That's how we will solve the problem, when everybody does their own little bit. So I now use bamboo toothbrushes, I use shampoo that doesn't come in a bottle, the bars. It takes adaptation. The results from these things, the toothbrush is normal, but the results from the shampoo is different. It's not the same as the one in the bottle. But that would be developed if people would stop buying the one in the bottle, you see. So it's all about the minimalist approach to environmentalism. And what that means is you look at the problem that you can tackle today. And if you are going to make the decision to go to the bar and get drunk with your friends, etc., etc., and there's 10 of you, then you could have went and tidied up your environment. You could have went and done a phone drive to protect these gorillas. You could have done anything other than waste time. And if you're parading as an environmentalist and not doing it, then there's a problem. And I'm only here not to judge anybody, but just to encourage, to say do something. Because 7 years ago, I had no platform to make a change. Now, I've got government backing in East Africa, and potentially using this social media outlet, the ability to raise what we need to protect the valley, which is home to so many animals, and provide a working example for the world on how we protect the environment, protect the habitat of the animals, and also allow humans to eat from there and the animals to not be damaged or affected by it. This is a huge opportunity in my life and for the world for me to create that. And in 5 years I'll have it going, and I'll have a blueprint for it. And I know I will, because I said 5 years ago I'd do the same with the children's village, and I'm pretty much there. So you don't know where you're going to get by taking the small step you can take. I did all this incrementally in small steps, and I'm not changing the world by any measure, but I am changing the lives of individuals and individual animals, and I'm changing the environment around me. And I presume the education we give to children on the topic will also carry on with that change. So to start with incremental small steps. Be a minimalist environmentalist, because look at this photo and understand it very clearly. You and I are responsible for how nature survives from this day on. And when you look at the fact that in the Congo alone, they anticipate that the tourism industry for gorillas in its collective, that means including the people who get paid to drive the cars and the hotels and everything, is worth $246 million a year in the coming years to come, with projections as they continue to be. Obviously, only a fraction of that goes towards protecting the gorillas. And thus, I reflect all of this video back to the recent insane decision to rebuild a decrepit old building which collapsed in fire, which people have a sentimental attachment to, but has no bearing or meaning on the original creation of God that he set forth here, or the original creation of life if you don't believe in God. That building is completely irrelevant to the life and the existence of a mountain gorilla that has took infinite amount of time to get to the point where it is in its growth and in its existence, to be eradicated till the end of time. It will never get a chance to express its life in that way again. And we're spending $1 billion on building something in France that's old and worn out, and they're scrapping around to get a few $1 million to be able to pay brave guards to protect one of the most iconic and endangered living beings and species left on this dying planet. The only way to save the planet is to save the sickness that's polluting the consciousness of mainstream humanity. And that's why, if you have any inkling to protect this planet, that it's up to you to be a man or to be a woman, and to fight, and to drive deep into yourself and get disciplined so you can fight. Don't think you need to start taking your clothes off so someone looks at you on social media, as I see all the women getting drawn into who start off as animal activists, start being attention whores. That's what happens. I see it regularly. Be an activist. Be of substance. Don't be one of these men who just ends up going into activism and then promoting a lifestyle, showing off their physical abilities and their holiday lifestyle. Don't be that. Be a real activist. Be a minimalist activist. Get into it. Don't get confused. Don't get dismayed. Don't get distracted. Your comfort zone, you'll never change the planet from your comfort zone. You've got to get out of it. It means you've got to stop drinking. It means you've got to stop doing mindless stuff. It means you've got to get organised. If you want to make an impact and a change, it's not going to be easy. But it can be done. And if it's not done, then the planet's doomed. At least the nature side of it's doomed, and in which case we're heading forward towards a sci-fi world. It's not a world I want my son to grow up in. I don't want that. I want my son to grow up in a place where I've grown up and see the magic and the wonders that I grew up seeing. I don't want him to see an old church. Be nice if he sees one, say, hey, humans built that 800 years ago. But even better to say, look at these beings. They're part of your ancestry. They were given way by the same life, the same sacred circumstances, the life, the air, the trees, the forest, that gave way for our existence. Gave way for theirs, which means they're just as loved and just as important. But sadly, oh so sadly, the only way to change the psyche of humanity is with the majority, because people follow crowds in the most part. So if you've got even a small song of protecting the planet in your heart, then you're responsible, because many don't have that song, but you can put it there for them. It's up to us. We're at that point, like it or not, we will now decide how nature survives. And I just can't believe that more people are not more concerned about it. God bless, guys. Oh, I think half the problem is everybody's weakened themselves and they say, oh, what can I do? The government has to do it. The world needs warriors right now. Crusaders. Crusaders in science, crusaders in environmentalism. It needs them. Has to be. There's no choice anymore.